What is up? 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 What is up, Grocknation? Welcome back to the arcade this evening for another Grock Stories in Grockstar ASMR. I hope, first and foremost, that everybody here had a really great summer. Those of us maybe in the education industry, or in my case, the mining industry, that has summer shutdowns to repair equipment and whatnot. We probably had a long holiday, or you did, like I did. And I hope you enjoyed your summer. I can tell you that for unfortunate fact, this is probably the worst summer I ever had in my life in this town I lived in. If anyone's paid attention to Canadian news, you know that northern Manitoba was on fire all summer long. So this, when it wasn't rainy, crappy weather, it was nice and warm. Not hot. It didn't get hot actually at all this summer. I think we had maybe 15 days of really, really hot weather. But if it was really nice, it was super smoky and you couldn't be outside. So yeah, it was a bummer. It was a bummer for sure for summer weather, especially, someone like myself that has a lakeside cabin. I couldn't really enjoy it fully. Unfortunately, this summer, first world problems, right? I did just get back from the city from a Deftones concert. I posted a nice short about that concert on my channel if you guys haven't checked that out. Tonight we have a story I've been talking about, telling you guys for quite some time, of my time living in a trailer that I always describe as like a Jersey Shore situation. Just a bunch of young guys living in a trailer we didn't care for, and it absolutely got trashed by the end of it all. But so I'm going to tell these stories. I kind of touched on them on other stories I've told in this channel, but I've never outright told the story of the trailer. So with that being said, let's dig into this story. Obviously, first, guys, if you like the video, don't forget to give it that thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, don't be shy to hit that subscribe button, as there is a ton of different ASMR in this channel. So with that being said, let's get started. Well, I debated whether or not I want to keep the real names of these people in here, other than my buddy Jackass, so I don't mind name dropping, as I'm still really good friends with him to this day. He's my best friend, but he's involved in this story as well. There's actually a double cross that happens against him in the story, believe it or not. But everyone else, I think, for the most part, I'll leave nicknames out, because if they hear this video, there's some embarrassing shit in here I'm going to spill the beans on. My relationships, I'm not going to spill the tea on anything sexual or anything like that. I'm not a dirtbag like that. I won't give them their names as well. But just this full disclosure before we start this story, because it gets pretty raunchy at times. So we have to go back to the year 2006. I just graduated high school. I told you guys I graduated a year late because of all the moving around I had to do. And at this time, I was still living with my mixed martial arts coach. Again, far away from my family. The closest family is 16 hours away from here. So, at the time, anyway, they're a little closer now, some of them. But I was lost to my family for about 5 years after my mother had passed. I was off on my own and doing my own thing. In a city on my own, in a province far away from my family, and it was just circumstance. I don't want to dig too far into this. If you really want to hear it, I got the story of my life on here. Pretty much covers all of it, but regardless, I was alone here, and I had been alone for a long time. So when I graduated, I'm like, what am I going to do? I think I'm going to move home eventually, because I was working a dead-end security job. Making next to no money. I always say I don't understand how people stick around these type of towns, like little town situations, and they're making no money. Just go and make no money somewhere where you're happier and or you have family. And I was of the same train of mind. But I knew it was going to be a couple years, or at least a year. I was giving myself a year at that point after I graduated to save up a little bit of money with my crap security job and move back home, or at least in Saskatchewan with my aunt and my cousins again, so I could be at least with family and be poor with them. that guy, the mixed martial arts coach. He was kind of an old. He actually just passed away, believe it or not, like 3 months ago. It was just awkward. He was a weird man to begin with. He was a big fat white guy that thought he was Japanese or pretended he was Japanese. It was this whole ordeal. I think I touched on this in my MMA life. If you want to check that video out, I got all these life stories on here. But it was a killjoy, and on top of that, it was what's what I'm looking for here, like a cock block. I couldn't have girls over because I lived in his spare room on a futon mattress on the floor, and he was always home as well. So my early hookups and my grade 11, grade 12 hookups in this town were exclusively either at the girl's home or her parents' home in some cases, because we were in high school, and or at parties. I never ever brought them home. I couldn't, unless he was gone to Japan for a summer, which sometimes was the case. He would actually go to Japan and, you know, see his fiancée at the time, wife-to-be, once in a while, and I'd get the house to myself for a couple months. I got some beard scratching ASMR sounds for you guys for another 8 hours anyway. I gotta go back to work tonight just for one shift, and then I'm off for 3 more days, but this has to go, unfortunately. So yeah, I wanted to move out on my own, and but again, I didn't want to be alone. It was one of those weird things where I guess the circumstance of me leaving home, like I just want companionship as a young guy, so I really wanted to live with my friends at the time. And it just so happened, at the time, my friend Andrew's uncle had passed away. He was a big fat guy, and he had a heart attack, and my buddy Andrew is a big fat guy, and his whole family's big fat people. They're like the clumps. So he passed away, and he had a trailer in one of the better trailer courts, I guess, in Thompson. There's 2 trailer courts. One's paved and one's not, so the paved one automatically becomes a nicer one. But we convinced him to convince his mother, because she got left with that trailer. The uncle left it to her, or her brother, I guess, left it to her. So we convinced Andrew to tell her, look, we could take care of it while she renovates it and tries to sell it, which she was never going to renovate it. They're very cheap people, but she was going to try to flip it, I guess. And we're like, look, we could absolutely just live there and pay the hydro, whatever it costs to keep it going until they can sell it. And this way we have a place to live. We have our own place. It's good. So he actually convinced her, which was shocking. And initially she's like, okay, you, myself, and Jackass, she told him, are the only 3 people that are allowed to live there. And that's all initially. And things would have been so much different now. I think life would have been different now because we still would have had this guy in our life, I think. Maybe not as prominent as he was back then, but if it was just the 3 of us, this definitely would have turned out differently, but it wasn't. I'll get to that here in a bit. So we move into this place. I'm so excited because it happened a month after I graduated, so, you know, I was really, in my grade 12 year, I was 18 years old, and in Canada you can go to the bar at 18. So I was really getting into this party crowd, I guess, of friends. I'm not friends with any of them now, by the way. So if you're a young person watching this and you have a little group that you go to the clubs together, and you think, oh, we're going to be best friends forever. No, you're not. They're just party people, bar people that you tag along with to go to the bar together to try to pick up girls or whatever it is you do. You're probably never going to be friends with them again. I know we're kind of getting off topic, but there'd be situations where I'd be away from the bar scene for a few months, and I'd come back and they'd forgotten, you know, not who I was, but they're like, they're not interested in friendship with me anymore. They've moved on to other people. So, but anyways, at the time I had, you know, bar people, and I had flirtations with girls as well. So I was really looking forward to the opportunity of having my own place finally, where I could bring girls back to. And yeah, I was, my friend Andrew and my buddy Jackass aren't partiers, but I figured I'd be the partier of the 3 of us, and they'd just be chill. This wouldn't be the case. So me and Andrew actually move in first. My buddy Jackass is, at the time, he's seeing some girl from Ontario, and his parents, this is how long ago this was, this is 2006, He was paying for long distance calling at his parents' place, so he could call her every night. It was sad as fuck. He had to call her every night, and he had to speak to her every night for hours on end. He wasn't allowed to not speak to her. That's another thing that happens later on that causes tension, but regardless, he didn't want to move in for that first month. He wanted to pay off or get his money's worth for that month's long distance, which was at his parents' place. So the first month he didn't move in, and this is where tensions happened. But we'll get to the night we moved in. So we moved into this place, and it was a cesspool. It was like a hoarder's house. And like I said, the guy was a big, fat, lazy guy. He had some brothers that would come up every November, and they would go hunting together. Hunting season in northern Manitoba is really, really huge for tourism. So what I'm getting at is the guy had a lot of furniture. He had excess couches in the living room. He had fully furnished bedrooms, even though he lived alone, didn't have any kids. So one of the things that happened when I moved in, and this is where I kind of like, when I talk about Andrew's family or Andrew, and I'd really talk about how sleazy they are, this is one of the things. You gotta remember I'm poor, and like I said, I'm an orphan, and I didn't have a bed. I owned a futon mattress on the floor. It was like a big cushion. So when I moved in, that was my very first bed, and it was just a queen bed, or a twin bed, or a double, sorry, I think it was just a double bed. But it was my very first bed, and I remember I was like, this is great, I actually have my own bed. And that woman, Andrew's mother's like, don't worry about your first month's rent, we were only paying $200 each to cover the hydro, so we were doing it. That covered more than the hydro, but regardless, it was $200. And, no, sorry, it was $400, we all paid $400, like it was way over what the hydro would have been like $200 tops total. And she's like, you know what, don't worry about paying me for the bed, you know, you could just, your first month's rent, that'll be just the money for the bed, it's your bed now, so you paid $400 for this bed. So I was like, great, okay, that's awesome, I have my actual first bed, so it was reasonably newer, because like I said, the guy just hoarded furniture for his brothers. We'll get to that bed here at the end of the story. So I moved in, and I made sure that Andrew spent the whole night with me cleaning, because just like now, I can't live in a pigsty, and this was a hoarder's pigsty. We had garbage bags of stuff we just threw out. We organized everything. He was angry. It was like 2 in the morning when we were done, and I was like, okay, we're done. And we wanted to go do shopping, but again, Jackass wasn't there. Jackass joined us for shopping, which was a mistake. The way we went about it, for my young people out there that are looking to move out with roommates, don't pool your groceries. We did. We all chipped in $200 each, half of a paycheck for me, and we bought $600 worth of groceries. And we were like, okay, we'll just, now we're going to be stocked. Don't do this, especially if you have a borderline obese roommate, which Andrew was. So we bought all our groceries and everything else, and what I'm getting with this is we bought a bunch of sweets as well, like junk food, on top of, just Delisio pizzas, stuff like 18, 19-year-olds buy. And he ate, I want to say 70% of it, like no joke, he ate almost everything, and we did it, I think, twice, and then we realized he was hoarding sugar stuff, like chocolates and chips, and because he'd be like, man, we bought like 5 boxes of chips, they were on sale, like buy a box of 5 or whatever, and packs of chocolate bars. We're like, where are they all? There's no way, like I ate one. And yeah, he was hoarding them. So we found it out. I'm not sure how we found out, but we went through his drawers and we found it. They were all there, so that was it. We're like, dude, that's it. We're buying our own groceries. He was the only one that was upset about it. And that's when we started dividing the pantries. The top 2 shelves are mine, middle 2 shelves are Nez, or Andrew, bottom are Nex, or Tez, sorry. Bottom shelf, his nickname's Tez. Bottom shelf is for Tez. So that's what we did. And during this time, at my company, there was a little tiny Portuguese man that was doing security that had just graduated the year prior as well. He wasn't a friend of mine, but I knew him from high school. I wouldn't say I bullied him because I wasn't a bully, but I used to call him Jiminy Cricket because he was just a tiny little man, like 5'5". His name was Peter, and he was working security. And this is just I have to add this on here because it's ridiculous. He was really getting friendly with Nez and myself at this time, more particularly Nez, because I told him his dad was looking to kick him out of the house, and I said, well, me and Nez, or me and my buddy Jackass moved in with Nez, and he goes, is there another room? And I was like, no, there's only the 3 rooms, and the 3 of us are in there. So he came over one day after work, like after I got home, he was there with Nez, and he was looking at our porch, and our porch in that trailer wasn't insulated, it was just like plywood, like a really cheap added-on porch. And he was convincing Tezio, sorry. He was convincing Tezio, who may or may not be called Nezio. He was convincing Tezio that let him move into the porch. Like the uninsulated porch. We live in northern Manitoba, it gets to -40 in the wintertime. And Tez's mom's like, no, it's only the 3 of you. I don't know this Peter guy. So I remember breaking in news to him. Actually, I was relieving him from work, and I was going to work. We were doing undercover security, catching thieves, and I was like, I'm sorry, man. I guess his mom said no, and he looked like he was ready to cry, so I was like, holy crap. Anyway, he moved himself in. Tez is like, just give me the money for rent, and I'll give it to my mother. And they never come around anyway, so that was the theory. So he gave him the money, and he moved in. Now, just before he moved in, that month and a half, I think he moved in the second month we were there, we were just a bunch of kids living in that place. I was going out every week with my friends. Andrew started coming with me. Again, Jackass really wasn't moved in fully. He'd bring a few things. I remember I warned him Peter was trying to move in, and he came and dropped a bunch of things off in his bedroom, like his PlayStation or his Xbox 360, some clothes and everything, to kind of like claim the bed so no one could move in. And we built a wrestling ring. That's where I was getting at this, because this guy again had a ton of extra furniture. We cleared out all the couches and cushions, or couches and loungers, or comforters, that's what I'm looking for, those chairs. Because, what was this? There was 2 comforter chairs, and there was 2 couches and a love seat in that living room. It took up all the living room. We cleared them all out, and by clearing them out, I mean we actually stood some up end to end, like so they were standing up. It was so stupid. And we had a bunch of 4x4s in the garage, and we actually made a square. We hammered them together. We made 4 posts with 2x4s. We bought shitty yellow rope, and we tied rope around 2 ropes. And we filled the inside with these extra mattresses the guy had in his garage. So we had a stupid wrestling ring. And we would get drunk and we would do like wrestling matches. We'd do wrestling moves on each other. Tez, I would say this, I forgot to mention this, is a massive wrestling fan. I think he still is to this day, which is nothing wrong with that, but he was 20 at the time, turning 21, and he was still playing with wrestling dolls. Like, he had an impressive amount of wrestling figures. Like, I'm talking, he had 3 boxes. I feel like we should get to this a little later, because this is a huge part of how fucked up this story is. Oh, he had a wrestling ring. And so when I'd bring girls over, I'd bring girls home from the bar, or girls I would start to see, I would have to usher them past the kitchen living room area, and more than one of them might walk past, and they would look and see the wrestling ring, and they'd be like, what the hell is that? I'm like, don't worry, don't look at that, don't worry about that, and I'd bring them to my bedroom. But, yeah, we had a wrestling ring we built, and, yeah, we would, like, just fuck around with it on weekends. We'd have friends over and everything. It was so silly, but so yeah, that Peter wanted to move in, so he ended up moving in. I believe it was the end of the 2nd month, maybe the 3rd month even. It was very soon. He moved into the porch, and I was like, I don't know what you're gonna do come winter, and it was getting close. It was like October, because he moved in like August, September, and it was like October, November. He moved in. It was already getting chilly, and I remember he got like a little floor heater, and he put his bed down on the floor, and he bought one sheet of drywall, and there was like a post in the middle of that porch, like almost like as a support for the ceiling, and he hammered that drywall piece onto that post, going to the wall, and then he hung a curtain with a rope, so he could almost like a door, and it literally, if he opened it, it was just a bed with a little heater in there, like as homeless as you could possibly get. And he had a girlfriend at the time who was his wife now. I don't know. They're both like messed up, but like they're both like crazy. And that was another thing too. We're like, dude, you can't have your girlfriend, who he was just starting to see living here. She's eating our food. You know what I mean? Using our showers and everything else. Like, and on top of that, like I said, they were both weird, but she was very, very weird as well. And so that caused tensions as well. Obviously, he wasn't even supposed to be there, so that was causing tension. And on top of that, he didn't like Jackass. Whatever reason it was, I think it was because he wanted that room. He wanted Jackass's bedroom. And so he played the Big Brother game. We agreed, once there was 4 of us, that we would have what we would call tribal council meetings. We'd get together in the living room and we'd air our grievances if we had any grievances with one another. In that trailer, someone's not picking up the slack, etc., etc. We were big Survivor fans, me and Tez, so we're like, yeah, we'll do this, called tribal council. And in some cases, if you're you could be voted out of the trailer, like literally voted out if you have enough discretions against you. So Tez was really getting worked over by Peter. Peter really wanted him out. He was convincing Tez how ignorant he was, because by the time Jackass moved in the second month, he got his landline deal switched over to our trailer. So that girl from Ontario was calling all the time. Like, our phone is ringing nonstop, to the point where, we'd know it was her. We'd see the caller ID. We'd just pick it up and we hang up, and she'd call again. We'd take the phone off the hook, especially when he wasn't home, because she'd call like every 15-20 minutes. It was bad. And so he was using that against him. One time he was eavesdropping in on a 3-way call, and they caught him, and they started both insulting him, and he used that as ammunition. See, the guy doesn't respect you, Des, and all this stuff. And then at one point they were like in an internet chat room together, and they were both ganging up on him. And Peter was right there in his ear going, see, this guy doesn't like you, he doesn't respect you. And I think the nail in a cross that really got him going was, it was Tez's fault as well. It was Christmas time, and I don't know why we used to do that back then, but we used to actually just tell each other what we wanted for Christmas, and we'd buy it for each other. Like, why not just buy ourselves these gifts? It was so stupid. I'd be like, yo, I want this for Christmas. And he'd be like, okay, well, I want this for Christmas. Like, alright, it's pretty much the same price. Alright, deal. And we were doing like, I will buy so-and-so, and then so-and-so will buy me, and so-and-so. So I was buying for that Peter guy. Peter was buying for me. Tez was buying for Jackass, and Jackass was buying for Tez. So I can't remember what Peter got me, and I got Peter, but I do remember Jackass was going to buy Tezio these wrestling figures, or a wrestling ring for his wrestling figures, like a real legit good ring. That would fit his wrestling dolls, I guess. Like, be the right size for how big the dolls are per square. I don't know. It was supposed to be like that. I remember it was like a WrestleMania 2 mat, and it came with a steel cage. I can't remember. He showed him. It was on some online site. And again, this is before Amazon. I think eBay was just very primitive back then. It was on some internet site from the United Kingdom. But regardless, that's what Tezio wanted. So Jackass decided, okay, that's what I'll get him, and he told him, here's what I want. I want Gears of War. Obviously, the Christmas of '06, the big game that was out, was the very first Gears of War on Xbox 360. So he told him, I want Gears of War. And Tess is like, alright, deal. Well, you give me the ring, I'll give you Gears of War. So we were actually at Walmart, because I worked there at Walmart. I did undercover security, and Tess worked there as well as an employee, a Walmart employee. So Tess was there looking in the electronic department going, okay, it's time to get Jackass's gift. I'm like, alright, he wants Gears of War. So we went and looked, and he waited too long. Gears of War was completely sold out. I think this is a week before Christmas. And he's like, great, now what do I do? I'm like, I don't know, maybe wait until after Christmas, or get him a gift card, I guess. And there was this really crappy Activision game, like Call of Duty game. It wasn't Call of Duty, it was actually Activision Civil War. And we looked at the back of it, and it looked like it was a Civil War first-person shooter that Activision made. I'm not sure if anyone's ever heard of this damn game. And he's like, I'll just get him this. I'm like, he's not gonna like that. He goes, nah, it's a good game. It's made by people that make Call of Duty. I'm like, yeah, but come on, it's Civil War. Like, it looks really cheesy. He's like, I don't know, I think he'll appreciate it's Christmas. And I'm like, okay. So he bought it for him. And as soon as we got home, he walks over to his room, and Jackass is taking a nap. So he opens the door, and he throws the game on Jackass's bed. And he goes, here you go, Merry Christmas, he said. Now you can order my ring, because Jackass didn't order his ring until he got his gift. Like I said, it was a stupid setup we did. So he looked at it, he goes, what the hell is this? He goes, yeah, they don't have Gears of War, so I got you this. And Jackass is like, what the hell, I don't want this. And so he threw it on the floor in front of Tez. Tez walked away closer, he's like, well, whatever, I got it for you. So he goes, I'm not getting you something, you didn't give me what I wanted. And Peter is like, okay, that's it, man, like, he hates you. Like, clearly he doesn't respect you, he doesn't whatever. So tribal council come around. We did a tribal council. And right away they were like, okay, like, he had Nezio, or Tezio. He had Tezio dog. And he was in his ear, like, it's almost like Tezio read exactly what he wanted, and he told him, look, you don't respect me. I don't know if we were ever really friends, and blah, blah, blah. And poor Jackass is sitting there devastated. So Tez is like, I'm going to have to put a vote to get to remove you from the trailer. Like, I think it's best you leave. And so they go around, he says yes, Peter says yes, I said no, and I was outvoted, so he was kicked out. Obviously, like, it was 2 votes to 1. So he told him, I'm on show by the end of the month, and he goes, that was like 2 weeks away. He goes, it's 2 weeks. You know, my parents are just moving. His parents had just bought a house, and they were in the process of moving. They haven't moved yet. And so Ted's like, I don't care, you're out at the end of the month. So he left, he was pissed off. Peter moved into that bedroom, and within 2 months, I was in the room beside it. I told Des, I'm moving out if we don't get rid of this guy, because he's up all hours of the night. Because his job, he worked for the same security company, and he stopped doing loss prevention work. He started doing mobile security. So basically, they got a security car, and they go around to all these sites all throughout the night, and they do checks and make sure they're not getting vandalized, kids aren't breaking in, etc., etc. We usually had about, at any given time, about 10 sites we would check on. And his girlfriend would be in the room watching movies all night, and he would swing by every hour on the hour, and he would stay for like half an hour, then he'd go do his check, he'd come back. And those with the wall, the insulation in that trailer was so thin, it was like little pieces of wood chips. Like, that's what the insulation was. Honestly, if you were in another room and you heard me whispering to you at this volume level, you could hear me and understand me. That's how it was. We used to have conversations through the rooms. I was in the middle, Jackass was to the right, and Tez was in the master suite to my left. And we'd have full conversations without yelling at each other, because we could hear each other clearly. And I told him, man, because I talked to him a bunch of times, I'm like, yo, can you turn your light off? Because the top of the wall, there was a crack, and this light would shine to my room. And I was like, can you please shut your light off? And keep it down, please. I'm trying to sleep. I need to be up in the morning. I'm working. And he wouldn't do it. He was so ignorant. So finally I told Tez. And another thing is he got a dog. And he never took care of it. He's a terrible, terrible person, this guy. I'll get to more stories about him here in a bit. But he got a dog when me and Tez both said, no dogs, man. We're not home enough to look after it. He said, well, I'll look after him. I'm like, no, you won't. You work as much as we do. Anyway, no dog. We voted it 2 votes to 1. You can't get a dog. He brought a dog home anyway. So yeah, that was it. He got kicked out. Our friend Rylan moved in, a mutual friend of ours, which he was an absolute booze hound. And that didn't last long as well either, and that pretty much was the end of that year we were in the trailer. You're going, Grock, where are the stories? I didn't get to them. I just want to give kind of a rough timeline of what went down with this trailer. So, before Peter moved in, or right around the time he moved in, I was really getting into my single Grock phase. Oh man, this is so bad. I would get, I would hook up with girls and I'd bring them over, and I'd get them a cab afterwards. Like I said, when I watched Jersey Shore for the first time with my wife, because we watched it together when it was on TV, when they would buy cabs for these girls at the end, we both laugh, and I wouldn't tell her at the time because I just started hitting her. That's what I used to do. I used to buy cabs, and because I didn't want them sleeping over ever, because I like to stretch out, and it's a small bed, and yeah, so I had my little phase. I think it was 6 girlfriends, 6 or 7 little girlfriends. I don't want to say their names. I almost said their name. 3, 4, 5, 6. There was 6. And then the last one I dated for quite a while, though. I dated her for like 5 months. But, yeah, I'd bring them over. And I'll never forget, I talked about this story once in Stories of My Life. The Chip Girl. I've talked about this. I'll cover it here because it involves this trailer entirely. She's a memorable one for sure. She worked for Frito-Lay Chips, and her name was Jamie. I'll call her Jamie. And I remember I was doing loss prevention, and I think it was like Extra Foods, or No Frills now it's called. And she was stocking chips there. And or was it Walmart? I can't. Jeez, it was Walmart or No Frills. I was looking at the ingredients, pretending I was looking at ingredients, and she was grabbing cookie dough. And she would chit-chat with me occasionally before then because she knew I worked there as security, and she was very attractive. She was older than I was, like 3 years older, 4 years older than I was, and she was sexy, I thought so. And she was getting cookie dough, and we were just kind of having a small conversation, and she said, well, I don't mind, I'll make you cookies if you like chocolate chip, because I was like, I love chocolate chip. And she kind of was like, well, I can make you chocolate chip cookies. It's like, I'd love it if you made me cookies. So the next day she shows up to stock her chips, and she brings me cookies. And I'm like, that's awesome, thank you. And I'm like, are you doing anything this Friday? It was always a Friday, remember? And she's like, no, you want to do something? I was like, sure, let's catch a movie. And so Friday came around. She invited me over to her place. She had her own house, which is, like I said, very mature at the time, because I think I was like 19, 20, and she was like 25. She had a kid. She was my first and only MILF, because she was my first and only MILF. And, I think her kid was like 5 years old, like 5 or 6, so it was a little girl. This little girl is like an Instagram model now. Like I think she's in her early 20s. I couldn't believe it. I actually stumbled across her Instagram. When I stumbled across this woman's Instagram, and I was like, oh, creep a little bit. I haven't seen her in a while, the Chip Girl. And, she had pictures with her daughter on there, and her daughter had a tag, and I'm like, who, this is the daughter? But she lived with her daughter and an old man. Like, there was like an old man roommate that she wasn't really friends with, but he was helping her pay rent. We rented Mission Impossible 3, and we were watching it, and I always remember hookup movies, I don't know why. And we were kind of fooling around on a couch, and her daughter, I remember, walked into the living room, and she was like rubbing her eyes, Mommy, or whatever it was, and I remember I was like, oh my god, your daughter almost walked in on us. And she yelled at her and, sent her off to bed, and then she's like, you want to go to the bedroom? And I'm like, oh jeez, okay, yeah, of course I do. So we go to the bedroom, and their bedroom is right across. I said I'm not going to get into dirty details. I won't. I'm not classless like that. But her bedroom was right across the hall from her daughter's bedroom, and her daughter's bedroom was wide open, because obviously her daughter just woke up like a minute prior when she would decide, let's go to the bedroom. So we go to the bedroom, her bedroom. She closes the door halfway, and I remember before we got started, I'm like, all right, you want to close the door? And she goes, no, in case, my daughter needs me. I'm like, what? And then and she turned on a blue light. Like, she had a blue light on the ground she turned on. Like, that was her light for this. She'd done this before is what I'm getting at. And, yeah, it was so goddamn awkward. And I was so worried that little kid was going to walk in on us again, doing something even worse. So the next, well, not next day, like I said, I like my sleep. So I think it was like 1 in the morning. I woke up and I walked home, which wasn't very far from there. Maybe 3 or 4 blocks. I walked home and I was exhausted. I thought maybe I'd see her again. I'm not sure. I enjoyed myself. I was walking around Walmart doing loss prevention work, and she blew up my cell phone. Back then, with those old flip phones, you only receive 50 messages at a time, and then it would be max. You'd have to clear out your message inbox, and then you can get 50 again. Don't ask me what, or point out how goddamn old that is, but that's the way they were. Little tiny LG flip phones are about this big. Flip it open, you type your text message. She blew it up twice, and finally, and it was such, now as an adult I can look at it now and know what it was such insecurity, because every third or fourth message I didn't respond because I was busy, I was working. She'd be like, is everything alright? Did I do something wrong? Are you mad at me? Etc, etc. And I'd be like, what? No, I'm working right now, Jamie. And she's like, you want to see me again tonight? You want to do something tonight? And I'm like, no, I don't actually want to do something tonight. I'm exhausted. I didn't get a good night's sleep last night, which I didn't because, like I said, I woke up at 1. Well, I stayed up till 1 or 2. Well, we stayed up till like 1, and then she went to sleep, and I was up until about 2 before I snuck away. And I was at work from 7 o'clock, or no, 9 o'clock until 6. Until I actually got home was around 6. And I was like, maybe, in a couple days or something, I need to, chill. Well, I get home by the time, because I used to walk everywhere, that's why I say I get off at 5, but it took me like 45 minutes to get home, an hour. It's winter time too, so it's dark out. I get home and I'm like, oh, I need to take a nap. It's the weekend. We're gonna go to the bar, obviously go hang out with friends, go dance, whatever else. So I get home, the trailer's completely black. Because I know, Tess is at work, Jackass is at work. Or no, Jackass was gone by then, it was that Peter guy, he's at work. So I'm going to get at least 2 hours, because I think Tess got off at 9, 2 or 3 hours of, I could take a little nap here, and then we're going to go to the bar. So I go into the trailer, I don't look at anything, I will go straight to my bedroom, I turn my light on, and she's laying in my bed naked under my sheets. And I'm like, what the hell? She's like surprised. She scared the shit out of me. And I'm like, Jamie, what are you doing here? And she goes, your door was unlocked, so I just figured I'd surprise you. And I'm like, wow. This chick is kind of crazy. So I'm like, well, she's here anyway. So we fool around. And I want to say the roommates came home. And I'm like, I guess I'm staying in tonight, because I'm exhausted. I'll sleep all night with her, I guess. Roommates came home from the bar around 1 o'clock, and I remember Tez comes into my room, turns the light on, we're both naked under the covers, and I'm like, Tez, what the fuck are you doing? And he's drunk, and he's eating a pack of Frito-Lay chips, and he goes, Randy, I fucking love this woman. She brings me chips, he said, and I'm like, what? I'm like, get the fuck out of my room. He closed the door, and she's like, I got a confession to make, and I'm like, what's that? She goes, I actually came over and just Tez was here. He was on his way to work, and I said, do you mind letting me in? I'll give you a box of Frito-Lay chips, because when she would work at Frito-Lay chips, she would have an overflow when she would stock these chips in stores, and she was allowed to have that overflow. It was one of the benefits, she said. So she would have an overflow, a box of just random assorted chips. So I remember before we watched that movie on our date, she actually had to go and restock shit. And she was showing me, she's like, you want that box of chips? You can have them if you want, great big box. And I was so fucking poor. I was like, man, at the time too, like, sometimes my lunch was a bag of chips and a pop. So I'm like, that could be lunch for me. But I wanted to play it cool. So I was like, no, I don't want a box of chips. Why would I want that? So she brought that box and she bribed Tez with it. And Tez let her into the house and let her ambush me. So as soon as she left in the morning, I got up and Tez was eating more chips, and I'm like, fuck you. We're gonna divide these chips now, and it's because of me she's here, I told him, because right away he wanted to keep it all. I'm like, no, we're dividing the chips based on flavors and who likes what. So I got all the sun chips, etc. I don't want to get into the chips. The bottom line is, I'm like, okay, I'm done with this girl now. I'm done. I do not want this girl around here anymore. I don't want to see her anymore. I don't want to date her. She's extremely clingy. She's a stage 5 clinger. I told my roommates. Jackass was still living with us because Jackass gets involved in the story right away. So, I want to say, like, a day or two goes by again, she's blowing up my phone, and I'm like, you know what, Jamie, I actually got a cold. I can't. I'd like to hang out with you, but I got a cold. So, like, a week goes by, and I'm still blowing her off, going, I'm still sick. I don't know what to tell you. My partner at the security company, Lindsay, a great friend, she was probably my best friend working there. She was aware of the situation. I told her I don't want to see this fruit-like girl anymore, and I don't have the heart to dump her, because I don't even think we're dating. That's insane that she thinks we're dating. I said we hung out one time, and then she started messaging me like crazy. It's just awkward. I said, can you just do me a favor, and if you see her in a store, let me know so I can go hide. And so that's what I would do, and I'd go upstairs and I'd watch her on my security camera, wait for her to leave the store. So a week went by, and I'm like, I'm sorry, Jamie, I'm still sick. So one day I'm in my room on my day off. I think I'm playing video games or something. And Jackass comes to my room. That's how I know Jackass is still living with us. And he goes, hey. I'm like, what's up? He goes, Jamie's here. She's at the door. I'm like, what? We'll get rid of her. He goes, what? You get rid of her? I'm like, no, man, get rid of her. I'm like, seriously, I don't want to see her. Get rid of her. So he went to the door and he come back. He goes, tell her I'm still sick. I said, she brought you chicken noodle soup is what he told me. And when he told me she was here, I'm like, I don't care, get rid of her. He came back and he said, she says she can see your shoes. She knows you're here. Because he tried to tell her I wasn't there. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, I don't want to see her. So she left. Finally, she got tan. Never spoke to me again. I would get laser eyes from her for the remaining time I would know her or be in this town. But, yeah, that's the Chip Girl story, which is a goddamn awful story. I guess another funny story of these girls, I guess, these are funny girl stories right now, was this girl, Rachel. She was actually friends with that Peter guy's girlfriend. That they were living together with Rachel's parents at the time. They were both because they were both still in grade 12. Peter's girlfriend and that Rachel. Obviously, we'd graduated the year prior, but at some point, she's like, his girlfriend Lindsay's like, my friend Rachel, my roommate Rachel, whatever, thinks you're really cute. And I remember I was like, really? And this is how desensitized, I think that's the right word, to dating I was. It really was like Tinder at that point. Jesus, that was bad. That was towards the end. That's before I started dating that girlfriend I had before we moved out. But I remember I was like, oh, okay, so she want to hook up, or she goes, yeah, she says she really thinks you're hot, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well then you bring her over tonight when you come over. So she came over, and I remember me and Tez were watching TV, and she came in, and I was like, she's kind of short, kind of cute brunette. And Lindsay's like, this is Rachel. And I'm like, hi, Rachel, how are you? I shook her hand. She's like, how are you? Blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, not bad. You want to go to the bedroom? And she said, yeah, let's go to the bedroom. So we went to the bedroom, and that was that. That's how, like I said, desensitized to, like, dating and women I was at that point. This is towards the end. There was, like I said, a ton of other women before then. These are just funny stories with girls I've had in that trailer. We'll go over categories of these trailer stories, but I remember we went through and we fooled around. We were done. Again, I think it was like midnight. I told her, I said, we were laying there, and it was the weirdest thing. She started talking Japanese to me. This is a white girl, mind you. And I was like, what? What was that? Like, at this point, because we were talking for like half hour after, I was like, this is a really weird girl. Like, just like a nerd, a big nerd on top of it. Which, nerds, nothing wrong with nerds, but like just a different level of nerd, I guess. And this is what I'm talking about. She started talking Japanese to me. I'm like, what is that? She goes, Japanese. I'm like, I know. I actually understand a bit of it from the guy I lived with, my MMA trainer. I'm like, why do you know Japanese? And she's like, oh, I just learned it from the cartoons I watch. She watches a lot of anime. I taught myself Japanese, she said. And she kept saying Japanese things to me, like lovingly. And I was like, what does that mean? What are you saying? She goes, maybe one of these days I'll tell you, she said. And I was like, oh my god. I gotta work in the morning, I told her. She goes, what? I'm like, yeah, I gotta work in the morning, so I have cab money here. I'll call you a cab, I told her. And I had $10. $10 get you anywhere in Thompson's, the thing we always used to say. I don't know if that's still the case, probably not. It's probably more than $10 now. But she's like, oh, I was like, yeah. So I need sleep. So I called her a cab and she left. And then I was like, okay, I don't think I told Peter after. I'm like, don't bring her back. She's kind of a weirdo. But he brought her back. This is the next story, funny story with her. And she was at my house completely hammered with her friend Lindsay. They were both having drinks. And again, I was trying to avoid them. She was there for me, clearly. She was pretending she wasn't, but I was in my room doing my own thing. And I think I was trying to get ready to go to the bar, and then they both burst into my room. Yes, I was about to go to the bar. They both burst into my room. I guess Peter, who was working, doing security, was fucking off, doing checks, and then he was going to pick up our roommates. They were at a house party and bring them back to the trailer. He was picking them up, Tez and a bunch of them. And so they were both in my room, just laughing on my bed. We were all just kind of talking, laughing. And then they started to make out. Like, and I'm talking seriously make out. And eventually, I think, yeah, it was Rachel was on her back. And Lindsay started to, like, go down on her, like, not oral sex, but she was, like, about to, taking her jeans off. And then I was like, oh my god, I'm laying there. And it's like, you see this, it's like you see these two beautiful little birds, and you don't want to scare them. So as the man, you're sitting there and you're just trying to be quiet and just, okay, go ahead and continue. I'm just going to watch this. I was laying beside them as this is happening. And just as I'm sitting there, just when things are about to get serious, she's just pulling them down. I hear a gasp at the doorway, and I look over, and it's Peter. And he's flabbergasted because he got hands on his head. And I remember I literally did this. I went, shh, look. And he just was flabbergasted, and he stormed off down the hallway, and he slammed the door to their bedroom. And she drunkenly stopped what she was doing, and she's like, was that Peter? I'm like, yeah, don't worry about him, though. And she's like, I better go see him. I bet you he's mad. And so she stumbled over there. I was like, hey, close the door. I guess me and your friend are going to fool around. So she closed the door, and I turned the light out. We fooled around. And then they fought all night long. Like dramatic fighting. And then she was pretending she was getting sick, and then she was dying. And then they had this extremely toxic relationship. But she said, I don't want to get too much into it. But again, Rachel went home in the morning this time. And again, I'm like, no more. I actually broke up with her over MSN Messenger. By breaking up, I mean, again, I wasn't dating any of these girls. I always said, I'm not dating you. And this is why I always say this, because these two are just two stories. I really hope I don't have a daughter one day, because I was really shitty to women when I was in my early 20s. Late teens, early 20s, oh my god. I definitely made a lot of girls cry. And that's not a notch in my belt or something I'm proud of. It's just definitely happened for sure. But MSN Messenger, for my young viewers out there, was a messaging service you had hooked up to your email. I know a lot of you, emails are just for receipts and stuff, but back then we used to chat with each other on emails. So I wanted MSN Messenger, and she was online. So I sent her a message, said, look, I just want to be friends. I hope you're okay with that. She goes, yeah, I was going to say, I think we want to be friends too. I'm like, okay, good. It was fun, but yeah, if you ever see us around, say hi. And her friend, like 2 days later, Lindsay's like, she really misses you. I'm like, God, it's too bad. I'm fine. I'm good. Around this time, I had my very first taste of a girl that was like a man. Like, I want to say I was like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old. It was right before I moved in the trailer. So maybe it's not a trailer story, but I should touch on it. I didn't know there were girls that were like men. What I was doing, there are girls that do that exact thing. And now as a, older man, grown man. I know that's just, girls are no different than guys. They have the same desires guys do. And there's no shame in it. If a girl just wants to go and get a new guy or a new girl every weekend, she has every right to, just like every guy has a right to, and you shouldn't be judged for it. But at the time, as an 18-year-old, I didn't know girls were like that. I thought, oh, guys are dirtbags, not girls. But I actually had my first one and done. She ghosted me. I never heard from her again. That next weekend, she hooked up with another guy at the bar, and the weekend after, another guy. And I'm like, oh, okay, wow, I didn't know that was like this. But yeah, I started dating a little newfie girl after that, and I really don't have any funny stories about her. I really think that's my only embarrassing girl stories. Aside from, like I said, I'd shuffle them by because there was a goddamn wrestling ring in the living room. So I should touch on a couple other categories we have here, one of which is the Dez, or Dezio. And obviously, like I said, he's not in me and Jackass's lives anymore. He was one of our better friends up to that point before we moved into that trailer together, but we kind of knew he was this toxic guy to begin with, but it got to the point where it was just next level toxicity. Like, I don't speak to this guy to this day. Jackass, I think, just re-added him back on Facebook. He's been on my pending Facebook for almost 10 years now. Just a very, very toxic individual. I always say he reminded me of like a 13-year-old high school girl. And he would get fetishes with girls he would have crushes with, for example. And the guy was, like I said, borderline obese. He used to walk around the house with no t-shirt on, so that was a gross sight to behold. He used to have all these weird tendencies. Like, for one, he had a crush on Jackass. I don't know if he's bi or he's gay. I don't know, I think he's ever had a girlfriend, but he's never outright said he's gay. But again, he's from my generation where that whole fag thing in the 90s, insult that we used to all say to one another, it makes a lot of people that are part of the LGBT community kind of stay in a closet that are around that age group, and I think he was in there as well. Like, he doesn't want to be outed, but he had a crush on Jackass. He would always like rub his thighs and everything, and then Jackass would explode, get angry, and then he would just kind of laugh it off. But he was always touchy-feely with Jackass. It's something I bug Jackass about to this day. It's so fucked up. But he was also very spiteful and very, he never wanted you to be above him kind of deal. It was just so obvious. There was a girl, for example, when he would get a fetish with a girl, you were not allowed to talk to that girl. He would tell you, yo, she's off limits. She's mine. I'm like, dude, no one's yours. No one's going to ever get with you that is as attractive as these people you're attracted to. But there was this one girl, Mihal. I don't mind name dropping her. She's a sweetheart, nice girl. Haven't seen her in about 15 years now, but she was at Walmart, working at Walmart. And she was his work friend. He was really friendly with her. He'd be funny and everything. They'd go for breaks together. And I do security, so I have run of the store. I could go anywhere I want. Undercover security. I started to realize that she had a bit of a crush on me about a month in, because she would talk to me a lot. She would touch me a lot. She would follow me around the store and just do laps with me, bullshitting with me, laughing and everything. And this was infuriating. The Dez. His last name's Dezio, and he likes to call himself Dez, so we all call him Dez. His slogan in high school was Dez for Prez. He tried to run for president. But, he was getting angry, and I was talking to her. And how dare I? He used to sing songs about her in a trailer and everything, like he gets obsessed with these people. So one day, out of absolutely nowhere, she just stops talking to me. Actually, she's outright rude to me. At one point, I asked her for a price for something because I arrested somebody. I'm like, I need a price for this item. Can you give me a price? And she's like, get it yourself. And I'm like, what is this? Like, why? I was like, okay, maybe she's having a bad day. And then it happened a couple more times. I'm like, wow, okay, I guess she's a bitch now. I don't know what I did to her. So I kind of avoided her. Didn't talk to her. I think it was like a month and a half went by. She slowly started coming around talking to me again. And we were actually having lunch upstairs together on her break. And she's like, do you remember like a month or so back when I was being a real bitch to you? I'm like, actually, now that you mention it, yes, I do remember that very well. And she's like, yeah, it was because something Des told me you'd said about me. And I remember I was completely blown away, shocked. I was like, what? What on earth did he tell you I said about you? I was thinking, oh my god, is he lying and telling her I like her or something? Is that what it is? Because I never told him that. We just make fun of him because he loved her so much. And he would always try to get mad at us, like, don't you ever go after her and whatnot. And she's like, oh, we just said you said some mean things about me. Then I was really interested because I'd never said anything mean about her. She's a nice person. And I was like, what? I would never say anything mean about you. I'd like you. We're friends. Why would I say that? What did he say? She goes, I don't want to repeat it. It was kind of mean. I'm like, no, I'd prefer it if you repeated it because I want to know. You know, maybe it's something he actually said, even though I don't think he's ever said anything mean about her. And she said, oh, he just said you think, you know, I told him you were cute. And he says, well, he thinks you're too fat and too pale, which was a abysmal lie. I was like, that is so far from the truth. Such bullshit. And then I'm like, okay, it's time to spill the beans on this guy. I'm like, this guy is obsessed with you. I told her everything. And she was like, gross. I'm like, yes, he sings songs about you. He warns us not to talk to you. And then she stopped talking to him for like 2 months, and he was so mad. I remember, I think it was 2 days, she'd stopped talking to him. He actually found me in Walmart, all panicked, and he's like, what did you say to her? I'm like, say to who? Because what did you say to Michal? She's all mad at me. I'm like, why would I say something to Michal that would make you get mad at her? Or make her get mad at you? You're not making any sense, buddy. He goes, come on, you must have said something. What? I was like, I don't know what I would say. Like, we don't talk about you. He goes, you must have said something about the reason why she wasn't talking to you or something. I was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I was just really playing dumb. He was so fucking mad. Yeah, she never did talk to him again. And good for him. He'd done that to me at least 3 times. I'm not bullshitting you. The girl I was dating, the last girl I was dating, we were dating like 5 months. She was 16, I was 19. He jumped all over it because he thought she had a crush on him, and she didn't. She was just a nice girl. I remember it was winter time, and he was outside pushing carts for Walmart, and it was cold. And we just had a Tim Hortons open in Thompson, so she went and got herself a hot chocolate. She seen him pushing a cart, and she knew he was my friend because we were dating. So she brought him a hot chocolate, and then she would say hi to him and everything else, and he genuinely thought she was in love with him. He got drunkenly hammered, and he told me and Peter that, you know, he's in love with my girlfriend, and he thinks she likes me too. And I remember we were both laughing. I'm like, she doesn't like you, you idiot. And he's like, he was crying, going, you just don't want me to tell you the truth because I'm drunk. I'm like, no, you sound like an idiot. She doesn't like you. People that are nice to you don't like you, buddy. That's not how it works. Some people are just generally nice. Like, she wouldn't find you attractive, trust me. And he was just angry, but there was multiple people, including this MILF. Not the original Chip MILF. A newly single MILF. She got a divorce from her husband because she got caught cheating on him. And she was living in an apartment with another Walmart employee. She was gorgeous, a redhead MILF. Probably 25, 26-ish. But, again, a huge red flag. And I really wasn't interested in getting with MILFs again after the Chip girl, so... But there was 2 or 3 of them, and she was openly telling those girls, you know, I don't think you should be dating her because they're 3 years apart. She's 16, he's 19. He should be with someone older like me, you know. So they got in her head, and they were telling you guys shouldn't be together. You know, you guys, the age difference is too much. And then Tez was getting in on it as well, and he was telling her ridiculous lies about things I was saying. So eventually I just broke it off with her. I'm like, okay, I mean, if you're going to be easily influenced by these strangers, these coworkers, that's... She really wasn't the brightest either, though, and it's not because she was 16. She'd failed grade 9 3 times. That was her 3rd try at grade 9 when I was dating her. She just wasn't the brightest knife in the drawer, I guess. There's no easy way to put it. Nice person, but not the brightest. But yeah, he ruined that as well. And then randomly he started going to the gym. And out of nowhere, it was like 5, 6 months after I'd seen the Chip girl, she texts me out of the blue. And she's like, yo, I don't appreciate you telling people that I'm a stage 5 clinger. And I was like, what the hell? Who is Jamie? I didn't keep her contact. I'm like, is this you? The stage 5 clinger is why I included it. I'm like, that's the only stage 5 clinger I know. And she's like, yeah, Tezio just told me at the gym that you've been saying this. I'm like, oh my god. So he got home and I just gave it to him. I was so mad. You know, because there was this stuff with that girlfriend, now my ex-girlfriend at that point, and then my old ex-girlfriend, or not even girlfriend, that's the thing. I'm like, why are you telling her that I'm saying she's stage 5 clinger? What the hell is wrong with you? And he was so mad, or so upset that I was as angry as I was. I'm like, stop talking about me, my guy. Now we gotta start talking about his wrestling fetish. As I have a Bret Hart mannequin signed singlet beside me. I'm a fan of wrestling. Well, I was old wrestling for sure. Like most, 90s kids were. But this guy was next level. I think he still is, just I don't know if he still plays with dolls, and I'm not bullshitting you when I say I wouldn't be surprised if he's still playing with his wrestling figures. This guy had 3 massive tubs of wrestling figures. And they were assorted accordingly. Like each box was like a different show. One was Raw, one was SmackDown, and I think one was ECW or WCW. The guy was serious when he played with these things. I gotta get into some stories about this because it's ludicrous, it's bonkers. So when we moved into that trailer, he was terrified of being in the back room. His bedroom, the master bedroom, had an ensuite bathroom and everything else, and had a water bed too. Because he was terrified that his uncle's ghost would be in that room. So he didn't want to be in that room alone. So what he would do is he would come to the living room, he'd hang out in the living room, we'd be watching DVDs, playing Xbox out there. I think we had an N64, an old N64 we hooked up. But he would come and he'd play with his wrestlers out there. I'd never seen him play with his wrestlers before, so this was new to me. When he gets comfortable with you, he'll play with his wrestlers in front of you. You're going, what's the big deal? He's playing with a couple wrestlers. No, it's not that. He does shows with these wrestlers. He has entrance music. He has tons of these little books. He writes their storylines in, and he keeps track year by year. Like, this event, so-and-so wrestled so-and-so, and they lost, and he'd write it all down. It was insane. Each wrestler was, like I said, they had, if you took a Bret Hart, for example, Bret Hart over there, and you put him in the wrong box, he would get angry, like, hey, he's not in Raw, he's in, WCW, or something like that. Like, it was just insane. He had a little TV hooked up to Raw vs. SmackDown, one of the Raw vs. SmackDown games, and he had music on there, and so he'd play the music and he'd make them walk out. Things like that. He would have them do backstage interviews. I wasn't kidding when I said this guy would definitely, like, he was next level, so he'd play with these dolls. And he didn't want anyone at his work to know that he played with these dolls. So when he would piss me off, I'd get pictures of him on my little LG phone, and I would show people at work, including that Mihawk girl, when he pissed me off, and everyone was laughing at him. So he was really upset about that, but people would never understand. Like, when that Peter guy was first moving in, Tez wasn't comfortable with him yet playing with wrestlers. This is a funny story I always tell. So me and Pika were playing N64 in a living room. And as we're playing this N64, Tezio comes in the living room and puts down a wrestling ring. And I'll never forget, me and, Peter looks over at it and he looks back at the screen like, okay, whatever, what is that? Then he comes back and he puts a tub of wrestlers down. He looks over and he sees a tub of wrestlers. He looks at me, he goes, what's, I say, no, don't worry about it, keep playing. We keep playing, he comes back with another tub of wrestlers and he looks over and he goes, what's he doing? I'm like, just go with it. And then he came back and he sat down and he had his little TV with his Xbox and he hooked up everything. And he started to play with his wrestlers, and I heard Peter's looking over at him. He's looking at me going, I was like, yes, he plays with his wrestlers. And he played with his wrestlers. Eventually he got comfortable enough to be in that room alone. He would play with his wrestlers in there, but we had to put up with it quite a bit. One story for sure I remember is watching, I think it was Departed. I was watching The Departed, and I was really getting into it in the living room, and he's scared to be in a bedroom alone, so he's in a living room floor beside me. I told him no entrance music, man, I want to hear the movie, and he agreed, so it was just me and him home that time. And he was, like I said, watching or playing with his wrestlers. At one point, there was a break into The Departed where something, I don't know, was a break, and I reached over, I grabbed a drink, and that was him playing his wrestlers. Is like background noise for me now. It's something I'm not paying attention to. But at this point, I'm grabbing my drink and I'm drinking it, and I can hear him talking, and I hear him saying something like, you made the biggest mistake of your life or something. And I looked over and watched him, and he had these two dolls like this. He had the mirror, and he was like, "This Sunday, you're dead." And then he'd make a face, like, cause one of them's scowling, like, and he'd zoom them in, like, zoom in on their faces, and then he noticed me see him, and he was like, oh, Randy, this guy, like, 4 years ago, he screwed him out of this title. And I was like, Tez, I don't care, you're fucked, my guy, you are fucked. And he just went back to playing with them, and I'm like, oh my god, how are we getting numb to this? He's like 20, going on 21. I'm like, this is weird. Fun fact, when we left that trailer, he moved back in with his parents' trailer. They made his room a storage room, and they put his old bed in their living room to make it as uncomfortable as possible, to make him want to move out. And his mother made sure that he had all his wrestlers locked up in a shed outside, and she had a padlock. He wasn't allowed to play wrestlers, he had to grow up. So when they would go on vacations for a month to Florida or something like that, 2 weeks to Florida for Disney World, he would break into that shed and he'd break out his wrestlers. It was so fucked up. But yeah, like, he was addicted to his wrestlers. And at one point, because his bedroom looked like a 10-year-old's bedroom, it was all wrestling posters everywhere, wrestling magazine cutouts and everything. I was like, man, okay, a rule I'll vote on if I have to: don't bring these out in the living room. I don't want to bring girls over and see all these wrestling posters on the living room walls. It would look so goddamn like we're little kids in here. It's bad enough we got a wrestling ring and gotta usher girls by. So eventually he did. He covered the living room in wrestling posters, which I didn't know until afterwards, was because they threw a bunch of golf balls in the walls, and they were trying to cover it up to hide it from his parents. His parents at one point showed up at that trailer like 3 months in. They just came and checked it out, and they seen the ring, made us get rid of the ring, which we didn't do for months. We just tore the post down. It was like this big, four big 4x4s with mattresses in the middle. We just lay on it and watch TV or movies. I remember at one point, when Rylan moved in with us, they used to have wrestling matches, spontaneous wrestling matches. And he used to put on this Harry Potter brown cape, and he would wear a brown balaclava, and he put a brown t-shirt on and brown jogging pants. He had the whole thing brown. And he would call himself the Brown Bastard. From the bowels of your ass, he would say. So they'd have these wrestling matches, and I remember at one point I threw a book for Rylan to catch as I was watching a movie. I'm like, here, hit him with this. And Rylan didn't catch it, and it smacked him in the face, and it made him cry. Like, the man was crying. Like I said, 20-year-old guy was weeping. I apologized. I was like, I'm sorry, Tez. I didn't mean to make you cry. Another time, they were wrestling. I was like, I was getting back into the living room. There was 2 steps to get into the living room, and I was like, all right, hold him down. I'm going to do it like a leg drop onto him. So he held Tez down, and he was playing along. Tez, he was happy, thinking I was going to be wrestling with them. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do a leg drop. It'll be pretty funny. You're not going to hurt yourself a leg drop on a mattress. So I jumped in last minute. I chickened out, which happens. And I came down on my knee, and I actually landed on his thigh, and again made him cry. So those are 2 funny stories. I was just making him cry. Which leads me into the airsoft weapons. At some point, this is after Jackass left, because it was me, Peter, and Tez. Peter brought airsoft pistol he bought from Walmart home, and he was like shooting it around. And I decided to get myself a little mini Uzi one. And of course, like you do, young guys, I started shooting Ezio with it. Or Tezio. He'd get angry, so the next day in his paycheck he bought a shotgun one. And they got so out of hand where we just randomly shoot each other, just out of nowhere, make it look like an accident. We would walk around the house with our weapons, like I'd have them in our pants. You'd be going up in the morning, getting a bowl of cereal, eating it. You'd have your airsoft pistol with you. You put it down. He would have his shotgun. I don't know how we never took each other's eyes out. At one point, I shot him in the forehead, I remember. And the reason why I bring this up is because I made him cry again. I actually shot his door while he was... Me and Peter had him pinned in his bedroom, like around the hallway with our guns. We were like, you're not allowed to come out of your bedroom, Tez. And he's like, fuck off, let me out of here. So he'd open the door. He's like, no, you guys fuck off, I'm serious now. I shot the door and he ricocheted off the door, hit him in the face, and he grabbed his face and he jumped onto the bed. I ran in there panic going, oh my god, I might have actually shot him in the eye. I didn't, but he was on his bed face down. You know, his legs were kicking and he was crying. My buddy Jackass always talks about how I was unusually cruel to Nezio, or Tezio. I was unusually cruel to him. And he doesn't know why, and I'm like, I used to just mess with him, and I used to make him cry, and I didn't mean to. It wasn't my goal, but another random mean thing I did to him was I came home from work. I'd worked at the liquor store, like a 16-hour shift, security guard at the liquor store. I was wiped, was coming home, going straight to bed. I got home, walked to the front door. He was eating a pizza pop on one of the lounging chairs, and Peter and his girlfriend were laying on a couch, and he was rocking on this lounging chair, and Jackass was beside him. They were all watching a movie they just rented that just came out. That might have been The Departed, actually, they were all watching. And I was like, hey guys, what's up? And no one was really talking, and I was like, what are you guys watching, Tez? And he didn't look back at me. He goes, we're watching The Departed, I guess. Maybe it was. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna go to bed. They're all ignoring me anyway, so I was like, yeah, before I go, I guess maybe I'll mess with Tez a bit. So I took my belt off. I just had a radio holster on it. Put the radio holster down. It was just a regular belt, a cheap Walmart George belt. And I'm like, I fold it up. I'm just gonna smack him on his shoulder. Not hard, just to piss him off. Just so he tells me to fuck off, and I'll laugh and I'll go to bed. That's what I was thinking. I'm not gonna double it up though, because I don't want to hurt him. If I double it up, it might hurt him. I'll just do it the long way, and it'll just annoy him. And that's good enough for me. I was thinking then I'll go to bed when he tells me to fuck off. While he's rocking on that chair, going back and forth, I line it up and I swing that belt, not hard, but because it's the long way, it has a bit of a whip to it that I didn't anticipate, and there was a little bit of lag to it, so when it hit his shoulder, there was a bit of, lag, so his shoulder, and then the belt came across, and it smacked him right in the face, and it was a loud smack, and I'll never forget, I was like, oh shit, I was like, oh my god, Taz, I'm so sorry, and he dropped his pizza pop, which for him to drop food is something crazy. He dropped his pizza pop onto the plate, and he dropped his plate, and he just grabbed his face, and he just kept rocking, which when he's really angry, he does that. He just gets angry, and he has like a 30-second or like a 10-second, he won't make noise, then he'll just scream. So I knew that was coming. He was grabbing his face, and I remember everybody, Jackass, Peter, his girlfriend, they all heard the smack. They looked at him grabbing his face, and they all looked at me like, what the hell did you do? And I was like, oh, Tez, I'm so sorry, man. Then he screamed, fuck. He got up and he frisbeed his plate at me. It shattered behind me in the kitchen. And then he picked up his wrestlers and he was about to throw the whole container, but he, knew better, and he dumped his container out on the floor. And he threw the container at me. He was mad. And, things like that. And he says, I was unusually mean to him. Like, I didn't mean to be. And for him to dump his wrestlers out was crazy, because I should have touched on this with his wrestlers. He didn't like you touching his wrestlers. You weren't allowed to touch them. If you touched his wrestlers and you made them wrestle, it used to piss me off, I must say, by how he played with his wrestlers. He wouldn't play with them like a normal person would with physics. He played with them like they were video game characters, like they would jump off the top rope and come down, and there'd be a big slam, and I'm like, no, you gotta just lift them up, and then they slam. Like, there's no physics to it, so it pissed me off. But yeah, if you smacked them together too much, he would grab them out of your hand, tell you to fuck off, and he'd like a hawk, he'd go over and see if you have any nicks or anything on them. It was crazy. I always said you get two reactions if he's playing with his wrestlers and you grab them. Say I grabbed old Bret Hart over there and I made Bret Hart run into the ring. Bring Bret Hart run into the ring while he's having a match. It'd be two things. One, he'd tell you to fuck off, because A, they're not on this show. B, he's not a part of the storyline. Something he would say. He'd say, hey, he's not here. He wrestled tonight already. He has nothing to do with this. Or B, he'd get excited and he'd start to play along. And then at that point you're like, what are you doing? I'm not playing with these. I'm just fucking with you. I'm not joining you. It's always two reactions you would get. Another thing we used to make fun of him over is the walls are so thin and he had an ensuite bathroom, and we tell him, like, dude, you spend like 70% of your day in a toilet, which he did. He was always on a goddamn toilet. I swear, as soon as he ate something, it came right out, like, and he would get so angry. He's just a weird guy. He was terrified of birds. He was afraid to walk anywhere. He was a big guy, but he could walk still back then. Not now. And he was terrified of birds, like ravens and stuff. He thought they were going to come and peck his eyes out. He was deathly afraid if there was ravens outside, he wouldn't go outside. We left him at the edge in the driveway. He had no shirt on. And -40 once he passed out there. We didn't know he'd left. And police officers came to the door, and he came in with a blanket on. And they were like, does this guy live here? We're like, yeah. And he came in, and he was pissed off. He's like, I don't want to talk about it. We're like, where was he? He was like, he was at the end of the driveway. I'm like, oh my god, he could have froze to death. I guess he was pretty well insulated, though. So yeah, he was a different cat. Getting back to his fetishes and how he definitely, like, fetishes over girls, I guess. Not fetish, what's the word I'm looking for here? Obsesses over them. For some reason, this mutual friend of ours used to come over for beers and whatnot on weekends, because every weekend that trailer was packed with people. We'd have parties after bar parties and everything. Or I'd have girls over if we didn't go to the bar. This guy came over and he was talking to this girl from Ontario that he met at a concert. She gave him his phone number. A Winnipeg concert. She gave him his phone number. Somehow Tez got this number, and Tez would talk to her every single day. And he added her on like High Five, which was like a primitive Facebook back then. And they were like talking, and he had it convinced that she was his girlfriend. And I remember he was telling us at the end of the month, this girl, Melissa, I think her name was, she's coming to stay with us for a week, just to hang out with us, with me and Rylan and all. I think at this point, Jackass wasn't there, Peter wasn't there, Rylan was there. They were a little drunk, and so I'm going to pick her up and bring her over. And you're not allowed to try to hook up with her, Randy told me. Don't talk to her when she's here, because I know you'll try. I was like, no, whatever, man. If this, I don't know what's going on here, but if you want, to have a shot with her, that's fine. I don't care. I won't even try. I was thinking to myself, I probably won't even need to try. It'll just happen, because she'll come here and be like, this is the guy. I remember the day came, and we were watching a movie. I think I had my friend Leroy over. A couple people actually were over. And he left to the airport. I was like an hour later, he came back with Rylan. Rylan drove him. And he walked past. And I was looking over, I'm like, where's Melissa? And he's like, I want to talk about it. And so he left the bedroom, and Rylan's like, yeah, she didn't show up. I'm like, really? That's weird. She said she was going to be there. Like, she called you guys from Winnipeg. I don't understand it. He's like, yeah, I don't know. And then a couple days later, he goes, okay, she's coming on the Friday or the Monday flight now, so we're going to go get her Monday. So Monday shows up there again and again. She's no-show Monday, so he walks past all pissed off. Later that night, me and Rylan are on watching a movie, and we can see the phone is on. There's someone on the line. And Nezio storms out and tells us, I think I'm fighting at Melissa. I think this might be the end of it. And I was like, are you actually dating this girl? I don't think you're dating this girl, Andrew. Maybe you're not aware of this. I said, no, I gotta go talk to her again. And so we seen the light turn on, and we picked up the phone. We were listening in. And she was straight up telling him, we're not dating. Andrew, I think that's it. I think we gotta stop talking. You obviously have different feelings for me that I do for you. And he started like crying, pleading with her. We were just giggling on the other end, and then as soon as she hung up on him, we hung up the phone quietly. He came back out, we had to play dumb, telling us, yeah, I think it's over. She just wanted me to call her anymore. We're like, oh, well, don't call her anymore. He's like, maybe I'll call her. And I was like, Andrew, she's gonna call the police soon. Stop calling her. So he calls her again, and again we pick up the phone, and we're listening in. And now he's weeping, pleading with her to please not hang up the phone, and she does. And just a weird guy. Weird guy. Like I said, horrible toxic person. There were some things he said about my wife now, when I first started dating her, way back then, that really pissed her off as well. And I was like, okay, this guy's never gonna change. So I think I brought him around her. And I was like, okay, I think I'm just kind of done talking with this guy. He moved to Winnipeg to become a big actor. Figured he was going to be the next big obese actor, and it never happened. He used to post these cryptic, like, inspirational quotes on his Facebook, because Facebook was new back then. And like Dostoevsky once said, acting is the greatest lie, things like that. That one I remember for sure, because eventually it was like 3 or 4 of them. I got sick of it, and I was like, what did he say about grown men playing with little wrestling dolls? You know, LOL. And his brother Matthew, who's friends with us too, he started laughing too. He's like, LOL. And Jackass jumped in. He goes, remember when he used to do this with his wrestlers? And I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, I remember, because we knew his friends from his, because he went down to go to like an acting school. He knew they were the ones he was putting on this facade for, like this phony facade, like he was this philosopher. He was so mad, and he deleted us both off of Facebook, and I was like, okay, well, I guess the trash took itself out, and it was like a year later he added us both back, and that's when he's been pending ever since. I've never ever re-added him, but yeah, when we left, I should talk about that, the bed. When we moved out, the bed, his mother told him, tell him he owes me $200 for the bed, and it's his. And I remember I was like, what? No, she told me my first month's rent paid for that bed. Like it was mine now. And he goes, no, she says, you owe her $200. This is after I had moved out. I think like a week later. He's like, my mother says you owe me $200 for that bed. I was so poor that I used to collect GST back then, because I would only make like 12 grand a year. And in Canada, every 4 months, if you make it under a certain amount, like the poverty level, you get a GST check, which is like $100 back then. Every 4 months or every 3 months, you get it in your bank account. And I remember she was holding off my GST checks. She wasn't letting me have them until I paid her that $200. Like she was withholding them because they would get delivered to that trailer. And eventually, I just gave him the $200, and he gave me those checks, which were nothing because I spent that money giving him the money. So I always thought, and then my buddy Jackass and everyone that knows them say they're very cheap people, and so that's a rotten thing to do because like you knew my situation, and you gave me that bed, and then now we're moving out. You want me to give you $200 for that mattress? Doesn't make any sense. So other than you're just cheap. But it didn't. Like I said, eventually it was just me and Andrew, and they were the last members of that Big Brother house. Everyone else had moved out or been kicked out. I think Rylan got kicked out from his parents because he destroyed that place. Him and his friends, they were the ones who put all the golf balls in the walls, and yeah, so eventually we did just move out. And I remember I just moved back in with that Jeff guy for a month, and then I moved in with Jackass. And then a co-worker of mine after Jackass, and then my wife now, so. But that trailer, man, I'm trying to think, did I miss any stories? Yeah, it was odd times. I should talk about this breakfast stir-fry deal with Tezio, since we're on Tezio kind of in this category. So he used to make breakfast for us, and again, we pulled for groceries those first 2 months. And the first week we were there, he made us breakfast. In the morning, he's like, you want breakfast? I'm like, sure. He goes, okay, I make a really good stir-fry. I'm like, a stir-fry for breakfast is from him. That seems a little much, but okay, you know, this will be interesting. So what he used to do is he'd get a whole pack of bacon. He'd cook up the bacon in a frying pan, and then he'd dump 4 or 5 eggs, because he asked me how many eggs you want. And I was like, 2 eggs. He'd dump like 4 or 5 eggs in there as well, and then he'd stir it all up, scramble the eggs with the bacon and the grease. And I remember watching, going, holy shit, you're gonna eat this? He goes, yeah, it'll be really good for us. And then he put a bunch of cheese slices on top of it all, let it melt, and he, you know, stirred it all up, and it was this big blob of grease and cheese and bacon and eggs. And then everybody scooped it out on my plate, and I'm like, this is why his family is as big as they are. Like, this is why they're the clumps. I will say I took 2 bites. It was the most delicious garbage I've ever eaten in my life. But 2 bites in, and because it was a small portion, it was like smaller than my fist. Half of my fist is all he got out of all those ingredients on my plate. And initially I'm like, this ain't gonna fill me up. This is so little. I took 2 bites, and with the grease and everything, it filled me right up. And I remember he ate the rest, mine and his. So we used to call that the Tezio breakfast stir fry, and the calories are like 5,000 calories. Another thing that I always remember is when we had our own groceries. It was getting close to payday, and he was looking for some meat. He was going through the cupboards, and he seen I had 2 craft dinner left on my shelf, and I was playing a video game with somebody in the living room, or we were watching a show. I was playing a video game because I remember I wasn't able to pay attention to him. And he's like, "Hey Randy, can I have one of your boxes of craft dinner?" I said, "No, those are for me." He goes, "How about this? How about I cook them both up, and we can eat them?" I said, "Okay, look, if you're gonna cook the craft dinner for me, yes, you can have that box then." So it's like, perfect. He started to cook the craft dinner, and I'll never forget. With craft dinner, you're supposed to get, I think it's 2 tablespoons of butter you put in the end, right? You put that in craft dinner, you mix it up in the end. This fucking guy dumped in a whole brick of butter, and I caught him. I'll never forget. Thank God I did. Well, I wouldn't have died or anything, but I happened to look back just when he was dumping the butter in there, and it was a whole brick of butter, a big, like cement, like a actual, like stone brick size. You could buy those, they're in tin foil, and he dumped the whole thing in there, and I remember I paused the game like, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "I'm putting the butter in." I'm like, that's way too much butter. Why are you putting that much in? He goes, "That's much I always put in." I'm like, "No, Jesus Christ, I'm not eating that." He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I'm not eating that. You can have it. You owe me 2 craft dinners now." And he was right mad. He goes, "What? There's nothing wrong with it." I'm like, "I'm not eating a craft dinner with a brick of butter in it. Calm down. Like, Jesus Christ, man, have a little control." So he was pissed about that. Another comical thing with him in food, other than him hoarding our food on us, our sugar food anyway. I remember I came home one day and I was really hungry, and I checked his pantry. His pantry was above the stove, and I opened it up, and it was walls of Walmart branded, like no name branded, fruit cocktail cans, like wall of it. And I remember I grabbed them. I was like, "Whose fruit cocktail is all of this?" Like to myself. And I heard him scream from the bedroom, "Those are mine. Leave them alone. I'm dieting." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I'm dieting." I'm like, "This is all corn syrup. You're not gonna lose weight eating these." Like, what the hell? They were on for like 80 cents a can or something at the time, so he bought a bunch. I didn't know that. I knew it then. I think I went to Walmart the next day and I bought $10 worth. Because like I said, back then I was a super, super poor paycheck to paycheck kind of deal. But yeah, he thought he was going to diet with fruit cocktail cans. Oh man, I think that's pretty much all the big drama / funny stories we heard or we had about that trailer. Like I said, that guy was living in the porch like Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys. I remember it was like -40, becoming in freezing, and they'd be in there with a little heater watching a movie. Oh my god. I really don't have anything else. There's a guy that's not a part of that trailer I want to talk about, but I don't want to bother talking about him. Some fucking weird stories he had in our trailer, like hiding out in our trailer because he lied about sleeping with a girl and her family was looking for him. I don't even want to bother talking about that guy. That guy's such a loser. I still know that guy to this day. Like, I haven't spoken to him in almost 20 years, but I still see him around. That Peter guy, I should probably tell this story because it's not trailer related, but it just shows what kind of character he is. He is your typical pathological liar, like massive pathological liar. I'll never forget the first time I met him at work. Like I said, I used to call him Jiminy Cricket in school. Because his girlfriend and him would come by. Me and this girl I shared a locker with, to talk to us, and I would talk to her, and I would always be like, "What's Jiminy Cricket, doing here?" Or "Who brought Jiminy Cricket?" kind of deal. But I remember seeing him at Walmart one day, and I was coming in, he was leaving. I was relieving him, and I was like, "So how was your day?" And he's like, "Oh man, I just got into a big fight here a couple hours ago." And I'm like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah, 200-300-pound guys. Little guys always do that, little tiny men. Like, this guy's, like I said, 5'5", that have little man complex, I should say, not all short men. They always bring up weight and height." And he's like, "Yeah, these 200-300-pound guys." And then he went on to describe the choreography of the fight, ducking under one guy's punch and hitting the guy in his stomach, and then kneeing the other guy, and swinging the other guy to the ground, and then kicking the other guy, and I'm like, what? It was my first time hearing somebody tell a lie like that extravagant that I couldn't believe someone was lying, so I'm like, is he telling the fucking truth? So I walked around about an hour looking for a thief after that of my shift, and I couldn't get it out of my head. I was like, doesn't make sense, because at the time I was a trained mixed martial artist. I'm like, this little tiny guy that's about a flyweight is doing that 300-pound guys. I don't see that happening. That doesn't make sense. But who would lie about something that extravagant and go through choreography, of said lie of a fight? So I went and asked the front door lady who was working there all day, and I said, was there a big fight here? A lot of action today up here? And she goes, I don't remember a fight at all. She said, Peter, arrested some young man that was stealing something. That was all I remember. I was like, that must have been the fight. So I went up to the Walmart cameras, and they have a really advanced camera system there. And I scanned all of it, looking for this big fight. Looking at the front door, and I was scrubbing. There's a knob you scrub, and I was scrubbing all the way back, literally to the point where I seen myself walk in and talk to Peter. So I went back a little further, and I seen him talking to a young guy. And then the two of them disappear out of the camera angle. There was another camera that rotates on its own above McDonald's that would see what's back there, but it has to be by chance. So I went to McDonald's cam, and it just happened to catch Peter and this kid walking to the back. And I'm like, what? So there's one kid, and it's like it was like a 13-year-old skinny kid, and take him to the back to file whatever he stole, and put him on file, kick him out, call the police, whatever we need to do. I don't think he called the police. I think he stole a CD, is what it was. Took the CD out of the case, put it in his pocket, and he tried to walk out of the store. So I got home that night, and he just was in the process of trying to move into that trailer, and I seen him, and I was like, how was that fight tonight? Or today? He goes, I didn't want to talk about it. I was like, really? Because I asked Sonia, that's her name was Sonia, the lady at the front door, about it. She said she never, seen you get into a fight. And he was like, so you don't believe me? He got super defensive. You don't believe me? It happened. I was like, oh, I'm just telling you what she told me. I knew the very next day me and him were working together. Because on Saturdays, Fridays and Saturdays, they want two people on all day, because theft is super high on weekends. So that Saturday, or the very next day we were at work together, I went straight up to the cameras and I scrubbed it back to that time, and I called him to the office while I was up there in the cameras. And I'll never forget, he came into the office, he looked at the screen, he seen me where I had it on pause, and I said, hey, look at this, would ya? I played it, and it was Peter talking to that guy. And I go, this is the only time you had an altercation at the front door all day yesterday. Where's the two 300-pound guys? At this point, he's going to lie. I'm thinking he's going to say it happened outside the doors. That's what I anticipated him saying. But he actually said, and I couldn't believe it. And this is why I always thought less of the guy. Well, the lies, I could get into a whole video on the amount of lies he told me, but from this point on it was. Couldn't believe he said it. He said they're just out of the camera view. Like away from the camera, you can't see them. They were this guy's older brother or something, older brothers. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, really? So I switched to the McDonald's camera, and I seen him walking that kid to the back. I'm like, where are they? Looks like you're just walking to this guy. And then he started getting angry. He goes, okay, so you really don't believe me this happened? I was like, you're fucking lying. I can see that you're lying. And he got angry. I'm like, no, you told a ridiculous bullshit story about you beating up two 300-pound guys. Why would you say that? And he didn't talk to me for the rest of the day. It was just weird shit like that. He was an odd duck. I should have brought that up when I was talking about him. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that trailer. The trailer stories. Wow, when I think back on it now, I really shouldn't have thought I was going to talk about all those girl stories. There really isn't much to it. We'd show up, we'd fool around, they'd leave. But those two particular ones are very, very, very unique, I would say. The Chip girl and that Rachel girl, very odd. But like I said, it was a weird year. We were only there for like a year and a half. I think it was fall of the next year. We moved in there, I want to say July, August, and we moved out like October, November the next year. yeah, it was an odd time. But you know, we were young. I didn't want to live alone. Like I said, had Peter guy not been involved, it would have been just me, Tez, and Jackass. I think it would have been a lot better. Things would have been a lot smoother, and there wouldn't have been as much drama for sure. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video, though, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Enjoyed the whispering, the ambience, everything else. But with that being said, guys, have a great day, great night, whatever it may be, and peace out. Peace out, peace out, peace out, peace out, peace out. Peace out. Bye, guys. Again, the boom's all angled awkward.